bill to us. One of the co-sponsors is Congressman Walter Jones, who is a Republican out of North Carolina, who joins us now on foxbusiness.com live. Good to see you, Congressman. So, you know, Darrell was telling us that this seems to be gaining a lot of support. I mean, how are things going with this bill?
It's going very well. As Darrell said, there's 165 co-sponsors. Ron Paul's one of my best friends in Congress, and I've been sitting on the floor with him when we have votes on the other issues, and it's been amazing to see colleagues come up to Ron and say, I want to get on your bill, 1207, the Transparency Act for the Federal Reserve System. And I really think that we're going to get enough votes that we can, you know, you can have what's called a discharge petition. If you get 218 co-sponsors on a petition at the desk of in the House, you can actually bring a bill out of the committee. But it's my hope that Barney Frank will see that the House of Representatives, as well as the American people, which is more important, they want to know how in the world is the Federal Reserve System operating without any oversight at all. And all Ron's bill does, and that's what Darrell said, was we're just trying to say to the Federal Reserve, you must permit an audit from time to time. You must be in a position when Congress calls you up to ask about monetary policies that you come and make an appearance before Congress. They don't even do that now. We have no oversight over the Federal Reserve System at all. And again, I don't think it should be at a point where that the Federal Reserve feels that they have to curtail to Congress, but don't we, the American people, have a right to know how they decide on some of these policies? They even have contracts with foreign government, foreign banks that nobody knows what's in the contract or the agreement.
Congressman, some great points there, but you know, we've heard the argument about you know, the Federal Reserve has to come before Congress and answer some of these questions. We've seen some of that happening, which is, you know, has been something that we've watched very closely here on Fox Business. But why now, and why the Fed? Why is now the right time to do this? And if you're getting, let me ask you this question first. Are you getting resistance from the Fed giving you information about what they're doing during this crisis? Are they
Absolutely.
pointedly, so they are saying to you, Congressman, no, we are not giving you that information. We are not answering a question that you asked.
Well, if the committee tried to bring the Federal Reserve up for the purpose of explaining a certain issue that they're involved in, it's my understanding from my dear friend Ron Paul that they can say, no, we're not coming.
But have they said
so
no?
This would,
is there an example of them saying, no, we're not giving you the answers to this question?
Well, I would answer you this way, Jenna, excuse me. Look at how so much of this TARP money, how much of the billions and billions and billions of dollars, and I'm going a little bit off subject, but, I mean, we can't even get an accountability of how the billions of dollars of the taxpayers' money has been spent.
Sure.
Well, the Federal Reserve has the authority to regulate and influence monetary policy, then I think they have an obligation, because their decisions could negatively as well as positively impact on the economy.
But we don't have any, that's the TARP, that's the Treasury, the Fed is interacting there, but we don't have any evidence right now of you saying that the Fed is keeping a black box on something that we've asked them, congressmen like yourself, have asked them about what they're doing. We don't have anything that says that they're resisting that. I mean, have you gone to the Fed and had that happen?
Well, I'm not, I mean, I've joined Ron Paul. He's taking the lead on the majority of this, but I'll tell you this. When the GAO is prohibited from auditing the Federal Reserve System, that in itself is enough to concern the American people.
Okay.
So the idea here is we don't know what might be underneath that quote-unquote black box,
Absolutely.
whatever the case may be, but at least we should be able to ask the questions to find out, right? Is that's what you're after, Congressman?
That's exactly what we're trying to do. It's a bipartisan bill with 165 co-sponsors, and we're saying that the Federal Reserve does have a certain responsibility to allow the people to know how they make these decisions and how they influence the policies of this country.
You know, one of our viewers wrote in and said, is this throwing good money after bad? Is this the same type of situation while you're working hard on what seems like a very valid, you know, attempt to get some more transparency? Maybe you should be working on creating jobs. Maybe you should be working on helping the housing market. Maybe, is this really where you want to put your energy right now?
Well, we're doing that as well. I mean, again, this is Ron Paul's initiative, and many of us have joined him because we think it's the right thing to do for the American people. No, we're still doing many other issues are facing Congress, and we're trying to do the best we can. But again, when you've got a monetary policy in this country where I didn't vote against the bailouts because all it was Mr. Paulson and Mr. Bernanke taking care of their friends who were greedy and made bad decisions.
So, but I guess the larger question becomes when you know, say you pass this, what's the goal? What's the end goal of this? And why do we need to commit resources to something that, I mean, and that's essentially what Jen is asking as well. But what's the end goal? What do you hope to accomplish?
I think a democracy, if we are one, or a republic, whatever you'd like to call it, I don't think we survive unless we have openness. And particularly when we have an entity such as the Federal Reserve that is so private that it can influence the monetary policies of this country in a negative way as well as a positive way, it needs to be exposed. It needs to have sunlight.
You know, Congressman, one of the things that we see, too, you know, of course, being part of a business network, is when some of the Congress testimonies for example, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke happen, it seems like, quite frankly, a circus, to not use a, you know, more appropriate term. It seems like sometimes a waste of time. So how would you be able to use the information from this in an effective way? Because it seems like, again, no offense to your peers or to yourself, but there needs to be a real education by politicians on the working of the business world before you can have the government audit, you know, a big part of it.
Well, again, I don't see whether it be a member of Congress or the taxpayer, anytime that you bring openness, anytime you bring education, and how can you explain how the Federal Reserve System works unless people have the opportunity to question, and they question in behalf of the taxpayers of this country?
How does the Federal Reserve work? How would you describe it?
Well, the Federal Reserve, in my humble opinion, is an entity that was created in 1913 by Woodrow Wilson, and that in itself, anything that was created in 1913, 100 years later, ought to be reviewed to see if it's outlived its need.
What do you think of the job Bernanke's doing? I mean, personally, how would you rate his performance to this point?
I'd give him probably a C+, B-. All
right. So what's the negatives?
Well, the negative, in my humble opinion, is how in the world, and I heard this on your show a little bit earlier, how in the world can this new administration and this government say to these banks who were almost coerced to take TARP money, now you can't pay it back? I mean, the whole thing up here is really in a chaotic situation.
If that's still how it is, because that's an interesting point. You know, Congressman, you made a lot of interesting points, but is that still how it feels there? We talk about anxiety in the marketplace and on Wall Street and how that can affect investors, but is there anxiety amongst your peers that you're still not getting the answers to the questions you need?
I think there's great concern that we need to have more openness, and that's why, again, Ron Paul's put 1207, the bill number, in this transparency bill. I think that right now the American people, and so many of us in Congress as well, we need to see the truth, because I will tell you, to the day that the Lord calls me, I will never believe that we should have bailed out Wall Street.
I think a lot of people agree with you on that.
All right, Congressman, thanks very much for coming on. We appreciate it, joining us. So Walter Jones, Congressman.
Thank you.